I have a family thing on here on the screen right now. And some of you may have seen my tutorial that I posted in the MTC Toots group. And so you can get the printable tutorial already there. But for the sake of those who would rather see it working rather than reading through a tutorial, I thought maybe I would show you this. It's a very simple process, and those who are new to make the cut, this will show you some really neat things that you can do very easily using fonts, whether it be regular fonts with text or dingbat fonts. So I'm going to get started here. I have this file is basically what we're going to do. So I'm going to start over on another screen here.
Julie, excuse me 1 minute. If you've been unmuted, can you please mute yourself? You're causing a lot of echoing.
Me?
Well, not you, just people that Andy is unmuted. Somebody's complaining that they're getting a lot of echoes.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I could mute myself, but it'd be a little hard to talk if I muted myself.
Yeah, that won't work.
Okay. The first thing I'm going to do is show you how to add a new page. When you first open Make the Cut, you have a default page showing. But if you want to add another page in the same file, maybe you have many pages that go together, you would just click on the Add a New Page icon, which is right here, and then this window opens and it allows you to name your new page. So I'm just going to name this family title and click on Add. And now I have a new blank page. And I think I will change my screen to the green screen because you might be able to see the lines a little easier. So I normally use contrast so I can see the colors better, but I'm going to use the green screen under the Virtual Mat tab up here on the main toolbar. So I just click it, and that makes my screen green. This is probably the one you all have. The other change that I made to my screen is that I changed the zoom down a little bit smaller. I think it'll be easier to see with 70%, but you can change how much of the screen you see at a time by just moving this little zoom bar here. So you have a question? Okay, the first thing I'm going to do is add a little rectangle to my screen. Now to do that, I go up to this icon here, which is the Basic Shapes menu, click it, and this allows me to find some of the basic shapes that are built into the program. A rectangle is a polygon. So I scroll down a little and find my rectangle, double click, and it's added to my screen in the position where my caret or cursor was. I'll move it down a little here. Now I want to make it a different size. What I want is actually a wider rectangle, and I'm going to change the size. You could change the size manually just by dragging on these lines here, or you can indicate an exact size that you want for your rectangle. This is going to be my title bar that allows me to connect letters that are not script, and then we're going to decorate that little title bar. So to change the size of this bar, we can use the Selection Properties toolbar. Now I have mine at the top of the screen where it normally is when you first install Make the Cut. So hopefully yours is in the same place, or if it's not, you know where it is. I want to change this little lock aspect ratio lock here to allow me to enter exact measurements and resize it. if you want to keep your proportions the same, you would use that lock in its closed position. But I just want to enter very specific measurements for my bar. So I would like the width to be 8 inches and the height to be 0.2. And after you enter your dimensions, you have to hit enter or else you won't get those, the dimensions won't apply. So now you see I have a rectangle on my screen that is exactly that size. So once I have my rectangle, I'm ready to add some nice embellishments. So to do that, I'm going to use a free text, a free dingbat font, and it happens to be WM Designs 1. And to see those, I'm going to scroll down in this, and you can see that there's all kinds of really neat flourishes in here. And I'm going to use 3 of the shapes from this font to decorate my little rectangle there. So the first one I want to use is one to kind of put bookends on my bar to kind of give the borders for the text. So when you find one that you want, you double click on it, and this one I want to use at this side and this side. But when I look at this closely, I see that this is not real good for cutting as is. And let me zoom in on it real close so you can see why it wouldn't be real good as is to cut. You notice that these parts of it are not connected. If I were to try to cut that, it would be a bunch of tiny little pieces that would be a real pain to connect. So to make this simpler, what I do is I notice this toolbar is down at the bottom now by default with this new program. I like mine on the left side, and I think Brian likes his at the top. I'll just leave it where it came in at. Only I get kind of lost. But what I want to do is I want to add a shadow layer, and this little icon down here, if I click on it, will allow me to thicken this font or this shape or any letter of the alphabet on a regular font. So when I click on it, this window opens, and I'm going to leave it at its very smallest width because I don't want to lose any more design detail than is necessary. So once I have opened this window, I'm just going to click on Accept, and then I'm going to click on this to drag the old one away, and now I have a new one that I can use for my design. I can just put it in place where I want it to be, and then I'm going to select the original and just hit Delete. Now I have one of my bookends here, and I want to copy that to make it and mirror image it for the other side. So let me zoom out a little bit so we can see both ends by moving on the zoom toolbar. To copy this, you can use Control-C to copy, but I'll go to the Edit menu so you can see what I'm doing and click on Copy. And then I'm going to paste in place. Paste in place keeps the size exactly the same, and it is pasted immediately on top of the original. And I want to do a mirror image, so I'm going to come down here to this mirror icon and click on it, and it makes a mirror image of that copy, and I'm going to put it in place. Now I don't know if it's exactly where it needs to be in terms of, I would like them both to be the same height, both of these. So if I hold the Shift key, then click the other one, I can right-click and use the Align in Space tool, align, and I want them to be aligned the same height, so I'll just use top. So now they're both at the same height, and if I need to adjust anything, I would adjust just the width position or their position horizontally. And I zoom in real well here by sliding out, and then I want to make sure that this little loop is just barely overlapping the bar, and I think I want to move the bar up just a little because I don't want a pointy edge on it. I want it to be obscured by the nice little shape. Okay, now I'm going to go to the other side and make sure it's lined up just where I want it to be. Looks fine. So now I'm going to add an embellishment. I'll zoom out a little bit for the center of the bottom. So I'm going to go back to my text and fonts window, and the one that I want to add to the middle is this one right here. Double click, and when you double click on it, it appears on your screen. Now this one's thick, plenty thick enough, so I don't need to thicken it. And I want to overlap it just barely over the bottom of this rectangle. When I do that, I'll be able to weld it in place. Now I could resize it if I wanted the size to be different, and I'm not sure if I want it different or not. You can, when you are playing with it, you can decide if you would like it to be a different size or not. When it comes in at the size of your caret. So the other one that I want to use, and I'll add my other ones before I decide if I need to change the size or not, is this one right here. So I double click it, and you see how it's the same size as this one. It's also, if I make it smaller, it gets to be very thin. So I think I need to use the layer to make it thicker, and I want this one smaller and this one a little bigger. This is going to be my main ornament. I purposely put my bar right on the center. You see how the center of each shape has a little dot? Now I can line that up with the dot on my center line on my virtual mat, so I know exactly where the center is while I'm visually placing them. But you notice these lines look a lot thicker than these. So I'm going to I'll make this image a little bigger and overlap it a little bit. I think I need to go ahead and use a shadow layer on it as well. So I click on the shadow layer, and you can make the shadow width as big as you want. I'll just make it just a little thicker so that it matches the original. And then by moving this shadow width slider here and then click on accept. And once I have that, then I can drag away the original. And you notice now that it's a little thicker and it'll cut a little nicer. I'm going to make this one a little bigger too, because if you get them too thin, they're really hard to pick off your mat and they will tend to tear. And once I have these pretty much the size that I want, then I have them slightly overlapped. Make it a little smaller. And you can just eyeball it, or you can do it certain measurements, however you like. And then you can, once you're happy with it, go ahead and go up to copy and paste in place, Control-Shift-V, and then just drag it over to the other side. Now once I have these all where I want them and the size I want them, then I'll be ready to weld them together. I think I'd like these a little bit bigger. Seems that...
Julie, just real quick, if you're unmuted, I am going to mute you unless you have a question. Raise your hand, because somebody is not muting themselves, and we're having a lot of people complaining.
So
I'm muted.
you're muting me?
No.
Okay, copy and paste in place and flip. I'm doing this again because I made it larger. It's easier to... Got it wrong. There we go. So you can see how I did that first time. Now I'm going to, again, hold a shift and select both and do that align again to make sure they're aligned at the top so they're the same height. Okay, once I have them where I want them to be, right next to that bar, overlapping, then I'm going to select everything by dragging my cursor around all of them. Make sure everything's, you can see the lines a little better when they're selected, and I see they're not exactly the same. This one maybe could go over to the right, so I just click on my arrow key to tap them into place. Once I have them there, I can click on the weld icon, which is right here, or type Control W, and everything just welds nicely together. Now I have a mat. I have what I call a title bar, and I'm going to go ahead and save this title bar as title bar. Go to File, Save As, and we'll call this title bar. And the reason that I call it a title bar instead of the family name that I have is that now I can use this bar for any title that I want. Next time I need a title bar, I can just drag this up and I can type any text that I want. So now it's time for me to add my text that I want for my title. And to do that, again, I'm going to go into Text and Fonts and just scroll through my fonts and see which one might work. And let's see, which one did I use? I chose Blue Ridge Heavy. It's a free font, but if you don't have that, you can just look through your collection. And one thing I do like to do is, if it has a bold version, to click on the B for bold. That'll give me a little thicker font most of the time. I'm going to move this. And I'm going to use all caps because it's kind of a formal title on this fancy frame. So now I can see my capital letters, and I see that that's what I want. So I'm going to click on this T here to add a group of characters. By doing that, they'll all be proportional one to another. So when I click that, I get a window to type in my text. So I'm going to type in caps family, and I don't really need to auto split or vertical, but I do need to auto split because I'm going to be resizing the F to make it a little bigger than the rest of the letters. So be sure to click on the auto split and then click on add, and it'll be added automatically to the right of, or wherever your caret is. So to get to that, if you find yourself in this situation where something goes off of the mat, zoom out a little bit. You can select it all and put it where you want. And now I'm going to zoom in because now I want to size that to whatever size I want so I can see it here. I want to be able to see the whole thing. And the bottoms of the letters need to be slightly overlapped on the bar, and I would like my letters to fill most of the title bar. Now you notice that these letters, some of them go real low and others are higher, but I'm not worried about that. I'm going to weld them on here, and I want the tops of them to be pretty much aligned. So I can resize this as I like. If I want to make it wider, I can pull out. And I would like to make this F taller than the rest. So I'm going to click away from the text to deselect and click only on the F and make it a little taller. Not a lot, but a little bit. And now I'm going to select everything And if it's the way I need it to be, I'm going to click on Weld. And now I have a really nice title. And I only need to really do one more thing, and that's to add a shadow mat. So with it still selected, I'm going to add a shadow layer to the whole thing right here, shadow layer. And on this time, I'm going to just eyeball it here in the preview window to see how large I want that to be. Doesn't seem to be getting bigger. Ah, there it goes. Don't need it quite that big. And you can just kind of scroll it until it's the size you want. Once I get it where I want, I would like to apply the blackout because you see there's some holes in here in the shadow. I don't want any holes in it. I would just like it to be a nice solid shadow. So that's why I click Apply Blackout, and you notice that all those little details are now disappeared, and the shadow will be one solid piece. So I click Accept, and there we have it. Now, if I move my layers up here, you'll notice that I have automatically a default layer, and then I have a shadow layer. They're already on their own layers, so I can color them or add textures as I like. If I select this shadow layer, I can change the color by clicking here on the color palette, and I can make that a color, or I can add a texture. I like this texture, bronze rust metal. So I applied that, and now I'm going to hide that layer by clicking on the eye icon, and I'm going to select now the regular layer, and maybe I'll just add a light colored, I could add a light yellow. Click on that, and now I'll open this, and now I'll show you the whole thing with the contrast mat so you can see the colors clearly. I like that. It turned out pretty good. So I'm going to go up here and I'm going to save this as family title. I'll call it version 2 since I already have one. And that's all there is to it. You can, what I've challenged everybody to do in that tutorial is to use some other dingbat fonts and make a file that you can share with everybody, decorate it how you want, and use any text you want, and use any font. And this will be a really nice embellishment. You can resize the whole thing for use on a card or scrapbook page. So any real quick questions, because I have to go in just a couple minutes to another event.
Julie, can you quickly show where you import fonts?
Yes. Okay, to import fonts, you have to click on the Text and Fonts button right here. Now, when you import fonts, you're only importing them temporarily. They will not be here the next time you close, make the cut, and open it again. But to use something temporarily, you click on this double T here. I have a folder on my desktop that I call My Fonts right here, and I leave them in this folder because I have hundreds of thousands of fonts, over 500,000 fonts. Well, there's no way I want them all installed, and I have them in here by category. So let's suppose I want a dingbat font. I can go to this folder, and oh, I have all different kinds of dingbat fonts. Maybe I want a traditional floral design. Well, I can click on it and I can actually see what some of the fonts are, which is kind of nice. So before you open it and add it, you can see if that's the one you want. So I click on Open, and it says that this font has been added. So now you see it up here in the window, and now I can actually see it to use it. I can scroll down to where some of these fonts are, images, and look at all those floral images that I have. I can use any of those for a similar project, just as I just did. So sometimes fonts don't have a bold version, so if you don't see anything and all you see is these boxes, you can click off the bold, and sometimes italics will show some things, sometimes just plain, and sometimes you have to scroll down to where the capital letters are or the lowercase to see all of the images. So did that answer your question?
Julie, can you tell them where to find the tutorial for that again?
Okay, let me just show you. If you go to MTC Toots and go into the Files section, this is good. People see how to use this. A lot of people don't know how to use Yahoo groups, but if you go to the home page, then you click on Files. It'll take you to the Files section, and this one is a basic lesson, so you click on the Basic Lessons topic, and the tutorial itself is the last one in here. Make a fancy title bar. So to get that, you can right-click on it and save link as, and it'll save that file to your computer. Another thing I noticed is that I recently, my software updated my PDF reader to a more recent version. So if for some reason you cannot download this, you need to go to get the latest Adobe Reader file. It's free at adobe.com, and that will allow you to open these. Sometimes you can just click on it and it'll open right on your screen, just like this. And give it a minute because it's quite a few pages long, has lots of pictures in it. So once it's open on your screen, then print it, or you can just read it. Any other questions?
Julie, I can't remember who it was, but somebody wanted to know where you would find textures.
Where I would find textures. Okay. I didn't show it on this particular demo, but to find textures, you can put them in a folder anywhere on your computer. Just add a new folder called Textures, and then you can hunt for them in any place. Now what I've done, I right-click on this, and oh, you have to select it first. Select it first, and then go up here, Change Color Texture, select Texture. Now, if I wanted to use a different texture than this, I can click on Choose Texture from File, and it will open to the last one you had. Now, I store my textures in a folder on my computer. See, yours are not going to be in the same place, but I have mine in my Gazelle software folder. You could put it on your desktop if you want. Also, if you have the new Studio program for the Silhouette SD, it has a folder with textures. Or you can just add your own. Now I have to go to this folder and this software, and it has a texture folder. So I put all of my textures in this folder. You see I have a lot of basil textures, and then I have fabrics and metals, and let's look in the metals. This, if I click on one, I see them here, or I can go here to see the thumbnails in this window here. I'm using XP, but yours is probably the same. I can scroll down till I find one that I want, and then I can just double click on it, or click on it. I'll see it in the window, and then paste. No, not paste, open. And then from here I can change the way it looks. But well, that's kind of an interesting effect, isn't it? So I have time for maybe one more question before I have to leave.
Julie, somebody wanted to ask if you can, where does the question go? If you can show them, oh, how to align the objects again.
Okay. I'm going to use Control Z to undo all of these. Okay, so these are all disconnected. Maybe I want to make sure all of these are all lined up the same, to the same height. Right-click your selection, use Align and Space, Align, and then you can use any of these. This would center it horizontally and vertically for stack, vertically, horizontally, but what I want is them all to be lined up together at their tops. So I click Top, and now they're all at the same height. I can now use my down arrow key. Oh, it lined up the bar with them. I didn't want that selected, so I'm going to move it up out of the way. Okay, so that's Align and Space. Very handy tool. I use it all the time. And in the printable tutorial, you'll see how I quite frequently have you realign things. So I'm going to have to leave now to get my son to his orchestra practice, and he doesn't want to be late. So maybe some of the others, Andy's here. I know he can answer some questions really well. Are you here, Andy?
I'm here.
Okay. So you might want to take the screen back.
Okay.
Unless you want to see my blank one.
No, I'll take the screen.
And thank you all much. I'll
Yeah,
see
thank
you
you,
again
Julie.
next week. Okay, bye.
Bye.
Thank you, Julie.